Okay, good morning, good morning. Nice to see everybody. Oh, it's actually afternoon now. Nice to see Adrian in a car. Always nice when we see somebody attending a webinar in a car. Please bear with me. We've got one or two people who are still signing in, and we'll try and let them in as we go. So just bear with me while we catch up with them. I think we've about got everybody. No, no, still some more. Just bear with me. Okay, well, say thank you to all of you for getting here on time. Absolutely fantastic. I don't want to waste any of your time, so I'm going to crack on. My name is Phil. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm the founder of Life Talk. I'm also the creator of the Advisor Growth Community, which I'll tell you a little bit more about a little bit later on. Just to let you know, fair warning, I have a very bolshy, molshy dog here in the room with me. He loves to be in here for my webinars, but he does occasionally kick off. Please bear with him if he does. If I put him in another room, he kicks off anyway. So we might as well enjoy it when it happens. So thanks very much indeed for joining me today. I appreciate you're all busy. Please do stick around to the end, as well as the content that I've got in this webinar. We've got some fantastic freebies for you as well, which I'd love to give to you. So first of all, for those of you that I've not met, because I'm conscious that we have quite a few new advisors. This is my 47th year in the industry. I started in about, was it 1978, something like that. I didn't go to university. I was actually doing rock concert photography back in the late 70s. Just for a bit of fun, I used to blag press passes to see mostly the rock bands at the Hammersmith Odeon, Wembley Stadium, the Rainbow Theatre. And that's really what I wanted to do. But my dad, I remember having a conversation with my dad at one particular afternoon, and he said, "So, what are you actually going to do? Because we don't really think rock concert photography is the way to go." Now, just to put that in a little bit of context, my dad was a dental surgeon. My mum was a magistrate. My mum's father was an inventor, an engineer of considerable global repute. My dad's brother was an officer in the Guards. His dad was the worldwide CEO of the Royal Exchange Insurance Company. So the idea that I was going to do rock concert photography kind of went over their head. But I eventually did get a proper job, and I went for an interview in the Dorking Job Centre. And the nice lady there said to me after like a 10-minute interview, "We think you're cut out for pension scheme administration," which I'd no idea at the time what pension scheme administration even was, but there it was. And I joined a company called National Employers Life. I don't think there's anybody old enough on this call to remember NEL. And I did pension scheme administration, hated it with a passion. But they did say, my boss did say that he thought I had an aptitude for sales, and would I want to be a broker consultant or a broker rep? Back then, we were all called inspectors, and our job was, as you probably know, just to go and meet up with financial advisors and to try and encourage them to sell our particular products. And I did that for 10 or 12 years with NEL, then a couple of years as an IFA myself, and then back into the provider side of things where I was head of national accounts for Zurich, and a couple of other companies as well. But for about the last 25 years, I've been an independent marketing consultant, out on my own, which I absolutely love. But as a result of being a broker rep, I've met tens of thousands of financial advisors, literally tens of thousands. I think I've presented to over 1 million financial advisors at conferences around the world. But the position that puts me in is that I've been fortunate enough to be able to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of financial advisor marketing. From advisors who are fresh out of the wrapper, brand new advisors, through to advisors who have been around for quite a few years and are about at that point of thinking about retirement. So I've seen what works when it comes to marketing, and it's really quite interesting is that you can divide up what works for newer advisors and compare that with what works for more experienced advisors as well. So, what I'm going to go through today is about 30 different things that I believe are most effective for newer advisors, or indeed advisors perhaps looking for a bit of a refresh in terms of how they get their message out there. Um, so I'm conscious also that one or two of you, if you're in an employed role or you are perhaps part of a network, you may have some form of restrictions on what you can and can't do when it comes to marketing and promoting yourself. I get that. But of course, if you are a new advisor or looking for a bit of a refresh, your situation may change over time. And so some of the things that you hear today, which you might be thinking, oh, I don't think I can do that, you'll be able to do it at some point in the future. That said, I'm not going to show you anything today that I've seen any compliance people ever have any problems with. So I'm not going to go down the wacky route and show you some wild and crazy stuff that I just know you can never get away with. Everything you're going to see today um, is based around best practice and around financial advisors that are actually doing it. Now, quite often, I do full day workshops as well, which are quite slide heavy. Today, I'm not going to do any slides at all. And I'm going to just kind of chat with you and talk through the things that I've seen working time and time again, and things that are really quite easy to copy. What I also want to try and do is focus on marketing activities and lead generation tactics that are quite low risk. They've got low cost of failure. There's no point saying to newer advisors or people who want to refresh their marketing, look, you want to try this, it'll take a bit of investment, and then it goes and fails and falls over. So I'm trying to keep the focus on marketing activities that work for newer advisors, also work for more experienced advisors, but also feature low cost of failure. That said, we don't want any failure at all. Now, let's start with in our Facebook group in Life Talk, which has been going for about 18 years. It's an online community for financial advisors at all stages of their career. They use it to network, share best practice, exchange ideas, ask questions, all that good stuff. But one of the most common questions that comes up time and time again is, how are other advisors attracting new clients? Now, it is a fact that most financial advisors, particularly more experienced advisors who have sort of been around a bit and got a bit of a client base already, tend to get most of their new inquiries from existing clients, referrals and introductions from existing clients. But what's interesting is that the fact that the question still gets asked, how are other advisors attracting new clients? The fact that that question is even asked suggests to me, yes, you might be getting some referrals, but maybe you could do with some more. And so people ask questions like, should I buy leads from Unbiased or other lead generating firms? So referrals seems to be the main way that financial advisors attract new clients. But we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go. But it's important just to put this in a bit of context about referrals. Before we had the internet, maybe someone was at a dinner party, you were around with some friends, or you're out at the pub or whatever, and the conversation will be going, like, everyone's having a good time. And at some point round the table, someone might say, just out of interest, does anybody recommend a financial advisor? Perhaps help my daughter get a mortgage for her first flat. And you were pretty well guaranteed that round that table or in that pub, someone will put their hand up and say, yeah, check out my financial advisor, Jones and Co. They're great. Always looked after us really well. Give them a call. And you would write down their number on the napkin. And the following day, because another human being had given you a referral, given you a recommendation, the most natural thing to do was just to pick up the phone and give them a call. Now, today, now that we have the internet, that conversation still takes place, but we don't automatically go to phone them up the next day. Someone will say, yeah, check out Jones and Co. They're great. If you've got a website address, that would be useful. You write that down on the napkin, and the next day you don't phone them up. What we tend to do, as you know, is we tend to go onto Google. We want to try and find out, just feel a bit involved, do a bit of due diligence of our own. Let's have a look at their website. What do we like the look of them? Do we feel that they could be somebody we want to talk to? But what's interesting is when we go onto Google and we type in Jones and Co. in Reading, Jones and Co. and Redding's website comes up, but so does a bunch of other financial advisors as well. And human beings being the way they are, curiosity takes over, and we're all but guaranteed to go and look at those other websites as well. And what quite often happens these days is, although we look at the website for the one we've been recommended, we will look at other websites, and it may well be that we'll decide, actually, well, yeah, Jones and Co. look okay, but I like the look of Smith and Co. They look more friendly, maybe they got more qualifications. There just might be something else about their website that makes us think, actually, I'm going to give this lot a try. So the old idea that if somebody recommends a financial advisor, automatically means you're going to get a referral or a phone call isn't necessarily true today. Because we have so much more choice, there are other ways to find financial advisors. And so a referral has got to be pretty strong, pretty powerful to make us think, okay, we'll just go with them. And we'll talk a bit more about referrals as we go. Now, a quick tip if you are a brand new advisor, or indeed if you're an advisor at any other stage in your career. And I was talking about this with a financial advisor by the name of Mike Legasic only yesterday. I run a book writing course for financial advisors. And in yesterday's module, we interviewed Mike. Now, Mike's a financial planner. He's down on the South Coast, and he's just about to launch his third book. And one of the questions that an advisor asked on this course was, Mike, where do you get ideas from to write your book? And he said, well, somebody gave me a little tip quite a few years ago to write down every single question that every client ever asks you. Let me say that again. Write down every question that every client ever asks you. Now, I was the person who gave Mike that tip. Now, we hear quite a lot about marketing and content marketing these days, and a lot of people would have you believe that when it comes to marketing as a financial advice company, you need to kind of be everywhere all of the time, posting every minutiae of your life, what you're having for dinner, pictures of your feet in a swimming pool on holiday, all that stuff. And that's the kind of body of opinion that a lot of people are saying that's what we've got to be doing these days. And I have to tell you now, if you are a new financial advisor, that is absolute nonsense. It is impossible to be everywhere all of the time. And it is much, much easier to have a fairly clear idea of the sort of clients that you want to work with and focus on where they happen to be most of their time. Now, to get content, if you want to post on LinkedIn, or you want to post blogs, or you want to put stuff on Instagram, or you want to write articles, by definition, you do need to have some ideas for that content. But if you have got a little book or a document or a spreadsheet of every question that you are ever asked by any client, you will never be short of content to post on LinkedIn or anywhere else. I have collected, since I started, when I first started going out on the road as a broker rep for an insurance company, for some reason, I don't know why I did it. Every time a financial advisor asked me a question, I wrote it in a little book. And I have got probably a couple of hundred of these little books where I've written down every, but I still use them today in my own marketing. I can dip in and I can find a question, and I can turn that into a piece of content. Now, today, the wonderful thing is, we've got AI, we've got ChatGPT. We'll talk a bit more about that a little bit later, which just makes the job of creating content so much quicker. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So content marketing, really powerful. But to give you the ideas, you need to have some ideas of your own. And the way I get those, every question I'm ever asked, I write it down, and I can turn that into fabulous content that we move forward. So let me tell you now about the most successful financial advisor that I've ever met. And we'll talk about what made him successful as a financial advisor. Now, as I said, I've met thousands of financial advisors, but this particular one was a one-person business. I say one person business, it was him and his wife did some sort of part-time secretarial work with him. Now, they were based in St George's Hill in Weybridge in Surrey. Now, if any of you know that part of the world, St George's Hill in Weybridge in Surrey is a sort of kind of private estate where the kind of A-listers and the celebrities lived. This financial advisor, his name was Mick. His next door neighbour was Cliff Richard. A couple of doors down was Tom Jones. So that kind of gives you an idea of what sort of area this particular place was. So very, very successful. And the life office that I was working for, NEL, we did pensions, but we also did mostly protection business. And he was on my patch in Southwest London, and I went to call on him quite regularly. But it astonished me as to the amount of business that he was passing to me. And one particular day, and I think I was kind of in my mid-20s at the time, I had the presence of mind to actually ask him, Mick, just out of interest, how is it that you're writing all this business? There's only so many hours in the day. What are you actually doing? And he said, well, it's quite easy. It's in two parts, my marketing strategy. Part one is I attend lots of networking events, and particularly in Southwest London. So St George's Hill Weybridge is kind of on the A3 that runs from the south coast up to the centre of London. He said, I go to a lot of networking events, and I really make the effort to do this. And as a result, I have met a lot of business owners in southwest London. They tend to be a mixture of small business owners and kind of medium businesses as well. I get to know them, I work with them, and I tend to do their general personal finances. We didn't have financial planning back in the late 70s and 80s. It was just financial advice, personal finance advice. There was a lot of selling going on as well, of course. Now, he said to me, so I get to work with local business owners, and the first part is I do their pensions, I do their savings, I quite often do their motor insurance as well, but I get to know them. So that's quite good quality business that I do. But what I always do when I meet with them is I ask, would it be possible if I could do a presentation to your employees, to your team, perhaps as a special session during a tea break, lunch break, special session, whatever. Now, because I was always working with the business owners, trust had been built. And whenever I said, hey, would you like me to do a presentation to your team? 100% of the
Mark's no
time,
doubt.
they said, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Mark's gone, mate.
No problem at all. You can do that. So he would do a presentation, and some of these presentations were like 20 minutes long in the tea break. Sometimes he could get an hour. And sometimes he was talking to just four or five people, and occasionally to 400 or 500 people. Now, what was interesting was he said, I would do a generic talk on personal finance, nothing more than that, nothing particularly complicated. The importance of protection, the importance of saving. He said, but what I did have was a handout, a killer handout. And he said, my handout was basically a postcard, which I would give to everybody in the room. And on the postcard, there were 5 questions. And it also asked for their name and address and phone number. And I said, what I would do is if you could just fill out the postcard, and at the end, I'll collect them all in. I'll do a quick draw, and someone will win a bottle of wine or something like that. So everybody in the room filled out the postcard. And the postcard, the questions were things like, are you a regular saver? Yes or no? What would happen if you were hit by what would happen to your family tonight if you were hit by a bus tonight? Really, really simple things. He said, so I collected in the postcards. I went back home, and between my wife and I, we then made a note of everybody who had filled in the postcard. And then what we did, we would send a personalized letter to every single attendee. Now, there was no email back then, so it was a personalized letter. And he said the letters were reasonably similar. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, or Mr. Jones, thanks for, I hope you enjoyed the presentation the other day. Sorry you didn't win the prize draw. I noticed from the way you answered the questions that you're a regular saver. That's really great. Keep doing that. That'll serve you well for the future. But I also noticed that if you were hit by a bus tonight, your family would be in a bit of difficulty. Would you like a solution to that? Would you like some help with that? And he told me that he got pretty well a 90 to 95% success rate by sending a personalized letter to someone who had attended his little workshop in the building. So he said that was the formula: networking, building relationships, and then asking the business owners who was doing their pensions and savings with, can I do a talk to your staff, to your team, giving them a nice presentation, nothing too long, nothing too fancy, a quick handout, collecting the data that they put on the handout, and then sending a personalized response. Now, that was back in the 80s, and that simple little strategy combines all sorts of other things which I'm talking about today. And the first things that you can see there: networking, attend networking events. The second thing, build relationships with business owners and then ask the business owner, can I do a talk for your staff? That's the next bit. So, public speaking, if you like. The third bit, collecting data. The fourth bit, following up on that data in a highly personalized way. And he said that was a kind of magic formula. Now, what's really interesting in our Facebook group, when financial advisors are asking about what marketing tactics really work in this day and age, one of the things that people often give to newer advisors is get out there and do some networking. Now, networking is not about collecting business cards. We've all been to networking events, haven't we, where we see the worst kind of networkers. They're the ones that kind of sneak into the room before everybody else and they put a business card on every chair. That is not networking. Networking is actually an activity where you turn up or you go to an event or you go to an opportunity. It could be a conference, could be a trade show, or it could even be where you're in a hotel bar one evening, you're away on business and you just get talking to some other people. Networking is where you are looking for opportunities to help other people or to introduce them to people who might be able to help them, and doing that in the expectation of getting absolutely nothing in return. Now, I know that in this day and age, time is short. You might go to a networking event and you're hoping that, maybe I can meet a few people and they're going to become clients. Uh, that's a natural thing for us to want to do. The right approach, though, is to actually turn it completely around the other way and let's see what we can do to help other people in the expectation of getting nothing in return. Now, there are three questions that top networkers generally ask when they are in a networking situation, which literally use these three questions, they will put you in the big league of networkers. They really, really do make a difference. And these are the three questions. And by the way, at the end, I'm going to make sure everybody who registered gets a recording of this as well, so you don't need to scribble all this down. So the first question is, instead of saying, so what do you do? Which is what everybody asks, and you kind of hand over a business card in a really casual kind of way. Instead of saying, what do you do? Ask the question, what's your area of expertise? Or, what are you really good at? What's your area of expertise? That's the first question to ask. Now, when you think about it, that's a really nice question to be asked. And when you ask that question, what's your area of expertise? You then keep your mouth closed and listen to the answer. And you keep your mouth closed until they have finished speaking. One of the problems in networking is we're just kind of casually listening, just waiting for our turn to start speaking again. So that's the first question. What's your area of expertise? The second question, which is another really good one, is along the lines of, what are you working on in your business right now that's really exciting? Or tell me about a project that's really quite important to you right now. And again, close your mouth, listen to what they have to say. Guess what they'll do? They'll tell you. Third question, and the final question, and you can ask this in a variety of different ways, is, and you can say, oh, that's a really interesting project. Sounds really exciting. Who could I connect you to, or who could I introduce you to that could help you with that particular project or with that particular? Is there anyone or is there any type of expertise that you think you might need that would be really useful to you? And again, they will tell you exactly what they're looking for. So, first question, what's your area of expertise? Second question, what are you working on in your business that's really exciting? And third question, who could I connect you to, or who could I introduce you to that could be potentially really useful to you? So that's networking, all sorts of opportunities for you to do that, conferences, trade shows. If you're a member of a local sports club, local volunteering. Local volunteering is a really great activity for new advisors as well. One of the most successful financial advisors I know used to do a lot of local volunteering, and he said, and he did it genuinely over the years. I've attracted a lot of clients simply because I showed up locally. So, local chamber of commerce. Can work really well for networking as well. And I've known a couple of financial advisors have actually even started their own networking group. Quite an easy one to do. You just get in touch with a few local business people that you might know. You don't need many people, three or four, five or six, and say to them, look, next Friday or next Thursday at 4:30, meet in the Dog and Duck in the back room, and let's have a couple of beers. And let's all find out more about one another and take it from there. And one financial advisor I know has been doing this in Essex, and he's got a networking group of around 250 members now. So it can be really powerful. Networking, super easy, costs virtually nothing. But if you get it right and you use the right sort of language, it can be very, very powerful indeed. So that's networking. What else can we do? One of the other things that Mick down in St George's Hill and Weybridge used to do when he got people to fill in his postcards, what he was actually doing was collecting data. One of the things I've done over the years is, I collected every single business card that I've ever been given by a financial advisor, which means that I have got a massive mailing list. Now, I know people change firms, and yes, there's GDPR, we have to think about it, so you've got to do it the correct way, but collect email addresses. Find all sorts of different ways to collect email addresses so that you can perhaps start a newsletter, a regular newsletter. Interesting about newsletters, a lot of people feel that there is too much email, but the simple fact of the matter is that newsletters are really, really powerful, particularly if someone has subscribed to them as well. And people absolutely love them. So, and don't be afraid to send them regularly. When we first started our Facebook group for financial advisors, I used to do like a monthly email newsletter to all the members. But a technology guy in the industry said to me, no, you should be doing it much, much more. My instinct was, no, weekly is too much. Financial advisors, they'll unsubscribe straight away. And he said, no, I'm not talking about weekly. I said, do it daily. And he said, just trust me on this, do it daily. So I started sending out a daily email newsletter, and I was astonished at the impact that had. I had far more people logging in every single day, far more people getting in touch with me, asking for resources, and it just worked. Now, I think a daily newsletter for financial advisors is probably a bit OTT, but certainly a weekly one can work really well as well. Something else that you might want to think about as well. In fact, only today, another marketing guy in the industry was doing a webinar on the importance of starting your own online community. My Facebook group has, for financial advisors, basically been the best thing I've ever done. And I said I've subsequently started up another online community, and it is a great way for me to continue to add value to my target audience. So our Facebook group for financial advisors got about 4,500 members. I've got a LinkedIn group of financial advisors with about 7,500 members, and my new one, the Advisor Growth Community as well. And in many ways, it's a bit like how would I put this? It's a bit like fish in a tank. Fish, when they're in a tank, as long as they're looked after, are quite happy. They swim around, they enjoy their little lives, but you have to feed them. And so, once a day, if you have a fish tank, you have to sprinkle some food in the tank. And that's a bit like how you run an online community. You have your members in a group, and the equivalent of feeding the fish is to put simple tips, ideas, and content. And what I've noticed, and this is quite a big thing in the United States, is that more and more financial advisors now run their own online communities, which, it's an alternative to sending out a newsletter. It's an alternative to running webinars. It's an alternative to running seminars. Just invite them to your own online community. So you could do that through a private Facebook group. You could do it through a private LinkedIn group. There are some ready-made platforms for creating your own communities. So Mighty Networks is the kind of gold standard of online communities. Another one is called School, spelled Skool. And you can also do it on platforms like Slack and so on and so forth. But have a think about running your own community. It's really, really powerful. Your members really feel part of it as well. And it's a really simple, cheap, and easy way for you to continue to add value to people. The more value you add to your community, your clients, your prospects, the more likely it is that they will want to introduce you to their friends, their relatives, and their colleagues as well. Okay, on to the next thing. Um, One thing I'm really, really keen about is the concept of having your ideal dream client. The vast majority of financial advisors, whenever I've asked them, can you describe your absolute ideal dream client? The overwhelming majority of them can't do that. They know a good client when they see it. So, just in your day to day as you acquire new clients, some of them and you can identify as being better than other clients. I like to turn that around the other way. And from as early as possible in your career, think about who in an ideal world would I actually like to work with? Would it be doctors? And maybe it's doctors because my dad or my mum used to be a doctor. Or maybe it's sports people. I'm not necessarily saying let's go down the full on niche, although I can give you some great examples of real niches. But more just having an idea of the sort of person that you enjoy working from. It might be an aspect of financial advice or financial planning that you are particularly good at, or an aspect of personal finance that you really do enjoy. Some particular client types, maybe some demographics that you particularly enjoy. So I'm not necessarily saying that every single one of your clients has to be a dentist or someone in a particular niche. It just needs to be think about who do I enjoy working with? Or if I have got a client bank already, can I identify any patterns in there? Are there anything that I can see? And maybe I could do a few more of those. Now, there are examples when you do go down a niche or you do start getting a lot more focus. What's really quite interesting to notice is that your marketing becomes very, very much easier. Now, let me give you an example, a fairly extreme example. I know a financial planner in the United States, Jared Wilkerson. He only will work, the only clients he wants as a financial planner are professional bass fishermen. That's a niche, yeah? Professional bass fisherman. He's not interested in working with accountants. He's not interested in working with lawyers, tech entrepreneurs, or anyone like that. He just wants professional bass fishermen. Why does he want that? Well, when he was a kid, his dad was a professional bass fisherman, and he was quite interesting. He used to go to fishing contests. But he didn't want to be a professional fisherman himself. He went to college. He wanted to get into financial planning, but he still liked his fishing at the weekends. So when he qualified as a financial planner, he still used to go to the fishing competitions, but many of the professional bass fishermen already knew him when he was a kid. They already knew his dad. And, the prize purses for a lot of professional bass fishermen are big. And who is a professional bass fisherman going to want to trust with their money and their savings and their future retirement income? Somebody in their community, somebody they already know and trust. So that's what he does. He only works for professional bass fishermen, not interested in anyone else. I know another financial planner in the United States who, when he started out, he had his website, he positioned himself just like any other financial advisor. And he began to realize quite quickly that his website looked exactly the same as every other financial planner. There was nothing to differentiate himself from anybody else. But in the past, he had worked in the nuclear industry. He had worked in a nuclear power plant. And he already knew quite a few nuclear power plant workers. So he thought, I could actually make this a bit of a niche. He was happy to take on all sorts of other clients, but he decided to focus on people in the nuclear power plant work. And I'll send you later a link to his website, and he's got pictures of nuclear power plants on. And what's quite interesting in nuclear power plants, they have like standard safety operations processes, and it's all in a big sort of flow chart. And what he's done is to copy this flow chart and turn it into a kind of personal financial planning and retirement planning flowchart, but he's done it in the same look and feel and style, and his clients absolutely love it. So those are fairly extreme niches. However, it does make your marketing very much easier, and you can actually get to the point where you become an expert in a particular niche, if not the expert in a particular niche, and you become the go-to financial advisor. So please kind of think about that. As I said, you don't have to dedicate all your client bank to one particular niche, but start digging around and thinking about, okay, what do I like? What am I good at? What are my passions? Who have I particularly enjoyed working with in the past? And become a real expert in that particular market, and you will find that your marketing client attraction becomes very, very much easier as well. If you do work in a particular niche, it's also worth thinking about, well, where do these people hang out? What specialist magazines do dentists listen to? What specialist podcasts do tech entrepreneurs like to listen to? What specialist newsletters do they like to do they like to receive? Go where your target market hangs out. Another little tip for you, which Mick used to do, and multiple financial advisors I know, which is really low risk, really easy to do, is to build relationships with local journalists. Now, when I first went self-employed, a friend of mine was a BBC news reader, and she used to present BBC Breakfast. She was a journalist in the past, and she said to me when I went live, "Oh, really excited for you, Phil. What's your PR strategy?" Which went like straight over my head. No idea what she meant. She said, "What are your plans to build relationships with local journalists?" And I said, "Well, I don't really have anything at all." She said, "Right, here's a little tip. Everything that you do in your business from now on, however trivial you think it might be, tell the press. In other words, send out a press release." It said, if you've painted the outside of your office, tell the press. If your staff or your colleagues or you have been on a customer service course, tell the press. If you've taken on a brand new piece of technology, tell the press. If you're sponsoring the local kids football team, tell the press. Build relationships. She said, now, most of what you tell the press will not end up in the press, but it could make good content for your website, which Google will like as well. But if you're building relationships with local journalists, something interesting happens. When there is an issue at a national level, like, for example, maybe there's a budget, maybe there's a change in inheritance tax, maybe some legislation changes, journalists need to write stories. And who do journalists turn to get expert advice and input from? With experts with whom they already have a relationship. So building relationships with local journalists is a really powerful thing, and those journalists will turn to you when they need expert help. And I know, and you can extend that not just to local journalists, but also extend it to national journalists as well. So I know a financial advisor down in Cranley in Surrey. He put a huge amount of effort into this kind of PR strategy, local journalists, but also industry press, money marketing, financial advisor magazine, all those sort of things. and they turned to him for expert comment. Now, what was quite interesting is when they turned to him, when an industry journalist turned to him for a comment, those comments more often than not ended up A, in their paper on their publication, but B, in their online versions as well, which made it easier for Google to find you, which enhanced the perception of your expertise as well. Something else you can do, I know multiple financial advisors do this, is they try to build relationships with local radio stations. And they'll go on to a local radio station, sometimes BBC, and they'll do like a phone in once a month. Now, I know at some point for a lot of financial advisors, imposter syndrome can kick in. But what you tend to find is that if you go onto a radio phone in, the questions aren't too hard going. Okay, they aren't too tricky. I've done it myself when I was an IFA, went on local radio, and it was really quite easy. But the number of inquiries that you picked up afterwards was fantastic. It's also great for perception of credibility. You can add to your website that you appear regularly on local radio as well. Another little tip, financial advisor in Leeds was telling me that he's just started to do is to do client walks. Yeah, you heard that right. A client walk. Now, he's been going for about 2 years, and he's got about 25 clients that he works with. But as part of his proposition and on his website, he says to them, look, once a month, particularly during the summer months, we go on a walk. We'll meet outside my office, or we'll meet up at a particular point, and we'll just go for a walk for an hour, 2 hours, and we'll just chat. They don't talk about personal finance, they just chat. It's an opportunity for him to get to know them, for them to get to know him, but for his clients to get to know one another. And that's a really nice thing as well. So once again, we're starting to talk about building a sense of community around your brand. So, how much does a client walk cost you as a marketing tactic? Absolutely nothing at all. And if you've got it on your website, or if your clients are turning up regularly for your client walk, guess what? They're going to tell their friends, oh, we work with Jones & Co. Hey, you want to come along for one of their client walks? So it's a great way to add value to existing clients, but also to help attract new clients as well. Something else you could do. I don't think there are enough podcasts in our profession just yet. I think the potential for financial advisors to get their message out through a podcast is absolutely massive, particularly if you have got a focus on a niche or a particular client type that you like to work with. Now, back in the day, putting a podcast together, in the early days of the internet, really quite hard going. You had to code it yourself. These days, it's as simple as picking up your phone and just recording some thoughts. But even better is to do some interviews, interview local businesses, and, your podcast, your little podcast that comes out of your back office or your back bedroom or wherever you happen to be working from can, in a matter of hours, be on iTunes. It can be on Spotify as well. YouTube is your friend here. Go onto YouTube and type in how to set up a podcast. I guarantee you will go down a lot of rabbit holes for several hours, but it is as easy as just picking up your phone and start recording. You don't necessarily need to have any really fancy equipment. You don't need to be position yourself as some kind of influencer. You don't even need to video record it as well. It's just getting thoughts and stories and ideas and expertise and wisdom and case studies out there for the world to listen to. Your podcast doesn't need to be an hour long. It can be 5-10 minutes long. If you want to do that, it's an alternative to putting out a newsletter. It's an alternative to putting out a webinar. It's an alternative to putting out a seminar. But here's a great way to think about podcasts as a financial advisor. And that is to once again think about who is my ideal client type and think, what podcasts do they listen to? A great way to get into podcasting, if you don't want to do your own podcast, is to be a guest on someone else's podcast. Let's leverage another person's platform as well. And again, just spend some time on Spotify or spend some time on iTunes, or YouTube, and search for specialist podcasts, and approach them. Now, most podcasters are looking for guests. They won't pay you to do it, but it's just worth thinking about it as well. So, yes, think about doing your own podcast, super easy to do, but also think about getting on other people's podcasts as well. Which kind of brings me to a slightly wider point. We used to say that if you're not on Google, you don't exist. And I think it's kind of fair to say, when it comes to internet marketing, that is probably still very much the case today. You do need to have visibility on Google. But what I would say also is we also need to extend that. So being on Google, I think these days is not necessarily enough. We need to think about being on Spotify as well. We need to be thinking about being on Amazon as well. And we need to be thinking about being in ChatGPT. I'm already meeting financial advisors who are saying to me, "Hey, Phil, we just picked up a new client because we appeared in a search on ChatGPT." So yes, many consumers now are using ChatGPT, the AI tool, as their search engine. So just kind of think about that for a moment. Google isn't the only search engine in town. Spotify's a search engine. Amazon's a search engine. iTunes a search engine. LinkedIn is a search engine. LinkedIn is the people and expertise search engine. Now, I mentioned Amazon there just for a moment. How can a financial advisor be found on Amazon? Well, I mentioned, I do a book writing course for financial advisors. In the United States, if you're a financial planner and you've not written a book, a lot of consumers these days, they kind of think, oh, okay, well, if you've not written a book, you can't be any good. Now, you and I all know that's nonsense, but it is a perception with many, many, many people. Now, in the UK, more and more financial advisors, yes, they are writing books. And I know some of you will be thinking, okay, I get it. Writing a book is a good idea. Writing a book, it's the best business card you will ever give away. Giving a client a copy of your book is one of the best things you can ever do. Having your own book will open doors to unexpected opportunities that you never even realized were there. Now, it's also, you have to think about the definition of a book. A book doesn't have to be a 500-page tome. It can be something with 20, 25 pages. It can be, yeah, take an article about a particular topic and broaden it out. We don't need to get in today as to how to get it published and how to get it on Amazon, but trust me, it is about as easy as you can possibly imagine. So by having a book or by having some content, radically repositions the people's perception of who you are and your expertise. And I would say to younger financial advisors, write a book as early as you possibly can in your career. Martin Bamford was a financial advisor down in Cranley in Surrey, and he wrote 3 books on personal finance in his 20s. He wrote a book called The Money Tree. He wrote a book called Brilliant Investing, and he wrote a book called How to Retire 10 Years Early. He wrote those when he was in his 20s. Now, I remember at the time, a lot of older financial advisors, when they saw that Martin was publishing his own books in his 20s, a lot of those older financial advisors, and they actually said it to me, how can he be writing a book? What does he know about financial planning in his 20s? Simple fact of the matter is, older financial advisors may have had more experience, they may have worked with more clients. It didn't necessarily mean that Martin was any less of an expert simply because he was in his 20s. If you write a book, or if not a book, you write some substantial pieces of quality content, I call it signature content. It completely repositions the perception of expertise. And if somebody goes to your website, you've been recommended at that dinner party, someone talks to you as a financial advisor, and one of the first things they see on your website is that you've written a book and there's a picture of your book, that really does change their perception, and it makes it very much less likely they're going to want to talk to another financial advisor. If not write a book, you could write a special report, or you could write a white paper, something in a lot more depth. You can do some research. I know a couple of financial advisors in London who their core marketing activity is writing special reports. It could be a report about a certain type of investment. It could be a report about a certain aspect of retirement planning. It could be a report on the pros and cons of equity release. You name it, you can write a report about it. The fabulous thing that we have today is we've got AI, we've got ChatGPT, which will help you to write these things. I've been doing marketing talks and workshops for a long, long time now. And, I'm really pleased that they tend to go down quite well. But I also know that a lot of financial advisors never actually implement any of the stuff for one simple reason is they haven't got the time and they haven't got the resource. No lack of desire, no wanting to do it. It quite often comes down to time and resource. But what we've now got is AI that can actually help us to get this stuff done, which radically changes how we are perceived. So I would argue get a book done as early as you possibly can, get it onto Amazon, give it away to clients, and trust me, it will open doors that you never knew were there. One of the doors that it will open for you is opportunities to speak in public. Now, I know public speaking isn't for everybody. But once you start being asked to do it, you very quickly begin to realize, oh, actually, this is quite interesting, particularly when they offer to pay you. So the opportunity to speak in public. So networking events give you the opportunity to speak in public, albeit for, 15 minutes. Some of you might be members of BNI. BNI is the world's largest networking organization, and if you're a member of BNI, you get to kind of do some presentations as well. But there are other opportunities that you can find to speak in public, which dramatically enhance the perception of your expertise. Both industry and non-industry trade shows are always looking. So let's say you are interested in working with dentists for sake of argument. Dentists have their own trade shows. Dentists have their own conferences. Build relationships with them and look for opportunities to speak at them. Speaking in schools is becoming very, very popular amongst financial advisors. Some financial advisors like to speak in schools as a way to give back. But we all know it's, information and education about personal finance is critical these days. So do that. So when you speak in a school, little tip here is have a handout, but design the handout for the kids' parents, not the kids. Make it so it can be understood by both. I do talks in schools on how sixth formers can use LinkedIn as part of their career planning. And I give every one of the students a handout with a few tips. And I know for a fact that that handout very often ends up in their parents' hands. And as a result of that handout ending up in the parents' hands, I get messages from parents saying, oh, I see you did a presentation at Little Johnny's school the other day about LinkedIn. Do you do that talk for companies and organizations? And how much do you charge? So doing talks in schools, universities, quite often looking for financial advisors. But another big one, though, is to speak in public, is to run your own seminars. Let me tell you now that the common theme amongst the most successful financial advisors around the world, the common theme that they all have in their marketing in some way, shape, or form is that they use seminars and public speaking. Seminars just work, full stop. Okay, there's no argument about it. Now, I said right at the beginning of this that I want to give you tactics that have a low risk of failure. the thing about seminars, I know a lot of financial advisors think, okay, yeah, I get the benefits of seminars, but what if nobody turns up and this could be expensive? And what if I hire a room and blah, blah, blah? Putting on a seminar is a process. Follow the process and people will turn up. You don't need to have 100 people in your seminar. Start with four or five. Okay, if you get four or five people come along, and you can do a little presentation, that's a win. Okay, and it's a win-win. It's a win for the people who turn up, and it's a win for you as well. What I'm going to give each and every one of you who's attending this today is I'm going to give you a copy of my book called Successful Seminars for Financial Advisors. Just follow the process and the people will turn up. Now, here's the interesting thing about seminars. Once you start doing seminars, you will be astonished by how high the conversion rates can be. I know financial advisors that have done seminars where their conversion rates are in the high 90s%, 90s, 90. And by conversion, I mean 10 people turned up and nine people wanted to work with you afterwards, or 100 people turned up and 90 people wanted to work with you afterwards. Think about that as a marketing strategy. So, as I said, the most successful financial advisors around the world use seminars or presentations in some way, shape, or form. Increasingly these days, they do webinars as well. Webinars work just as well. They are a slightly different dynamic as well. And webinars give you the opportunity to do the same thing more often. Those of you that have heard of Daniel Priestley, who's written a few books, an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, he talks about, as part of his marketing strategy, the perfect repeatable week, where they do the same seminar every single week as a core part of their funnel that leads people into their world. So think about that, follow the process, and you will get more people come in. So we're about an hour in. I've got about another quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, so I hope you'll stick with me. Now let's just go back to referrals, because what's really interesting is when I ask financial advisors, what's your referral strategy? Almost nobody says, I've got one. Just like I said to my journalist friend, I don't have a PR strategy. Most financial advisors don't have a referral strategy. A referral, if you have got a written down, carefully thought through referral strategy, you need never worry about marketing and lead generation ever again. But most financial advisors, particularly financial advisors in the UK, we get a little bit overcautious about asking for referrals. I don't know whether it's a slightly British thing that we don't quite feel it's the right thing to do, to be asking for referrals. Some people think it looks a bit needy. It really doesn't as well. But there is a trick to looking for referrals. And I just want to very, very briefly tell you about this little trick. If you are working with a client and you do a good job for them, then it becomes very likely and reasonable that they will refer you to a friend, colleague, or a relative. However, we want to make sure that that actually happens. And one of the things that a lot of financial advisors fail to do when they're working with clients is they fail to notice when a client that you're talking to one to one, they fail to notice when a client is experiencing value. What do I mean by that? It's when a client is nodding. It's when a client says, "Oh, I didn't realize that." Or, "I see, that's interesting." Or when they say something like, "Oh, that's a weight off my mind. I didn't realize we could do that." If you're doing a great job with a client, they do this stuff all of the time. Quite often you notice it, but it goes straight over your head. What I want you to do from now on is to start consciously notice when a client is experiencing value and articulating that they are receiving value. That is the moment when you need to be segueing into the conversation, something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm glad you found that useful. If you know any friends or relatives or colleagues that could benefit from that as well, it would be great if you could introduce us to them." Um, that's the really, really short version. I've got a whole separate webinar on how to do that effectively. But here's a little thing that you might find useful. I know that more and more financial advisors are now recording client meetings. And they might be using an AI tool. The one I use is Fireflies. That's the one that really, really works well for me. One of the great things about recording client meetings is you can then get a transcript. And then what you can do with the transcript is really, really interesting. You can take that transcript, you can anonymize the names and put it into ChatGPT, and you can do a variety of different things. One of the things you can do is to say, hey, ChatGPT, this is a transcript I just had of a client meeting. Please list out all the moments where the client was experiencing value or articulated that they had received value. And you'll be amazed how many times a client, and you can learn from that. You can then, if you want to, you could role play the same meeting again with a colleague, and just start practicing how you engage with a client when they say they're experiencing value. Another useful thing that you can use transcript for, not quite on the marketing side of things, but transcripts of client meetings are really useful for identifying signs of perhaps vulnerability. Did the client say to ChatGPT, were there any times when my client was expressing perhaps a sign of vulnerability? Maybe they didn't understand something, or did I not make something clear? You can use transcripts in a variety of different ways. But as a marketing tool, those transcripts are really, really powerful. They're not just there to sit on the compliance file, they're to help train you to look for marketing opportunities as often as you possibly can. Let's move on to LinkedIn. Um, LinkedIn is an absolute powerhouse of opportunity for financial advisors. But most financial advisors are just not using it correctly. Let's go back to networking. When LinkedIn first appeared in 2003, the whole point of the platform was it was there to complement the networking that we did in real life. So maybe you met someone at a conference yesterday, or at a networking event, or at a trade show. Maybe you exchanged business cards. Now you've gone onto LinkedIn, you want to check them out. Hey, Mary, great to meet you at the conference yesterday. Let's connect. That was what LinkedIn was created to do, to complement real world stuff. And you could do it the other way around as well. Maybe you just got the guest list or the speaker list for a conference that you're going to go to next week. You can check them out on LinkedIn, and you can send them a message in advance and say, hey, I can see that you're speaking, or you're going to such and such a conference next week. Let's connect, and maybe we can meet up as well. So that's what networking, what LinkedIn was really for. But what a lot of people don't realize is that LinkedIn today is still there to complement real world networking. And what's really interesting is that part of the way the LinkedIn algorithm works is that it rewards users for exhibiting networking behaviors. So most people on LinkedIn are using it as a broadcast platform. Okay, that's fine. It works up to a point. There is actually a proven process to attract ideal clients to your profile. But most people are going around it in a fairly difficult, in a way, it's a bit clumsy. Clumsy is the right way to put it. They post content onto LinkedIn and hope that it'll make a difference. That is a broadcasting behavior. But if you engage with other people on LinkedIn in a networking kind of way, using the same approach that I just explained earlier, the LinkedIn algorithm can tell the difference between a broadcasting post and a networking post. So if somebody perhaps puts something on LinkedIn, you can go and comment on that post and say, hey, Mary, that's a really interesting post. I hadn't thought of that. Tell me, what are you working on in your business right now that's really exciting? Or is there anyone I can connect you to that could help you with that? And that's a really great approach to do in LinkedIn messaging. So use the same real life networking language that you might use at BNI at a conference or something like that. Use that on LinkedIn as well. The LinkedIn algorithm can see that you're doing that, and it will reward you. And it will reward you by making your own content more visible in search results, give it more visibility, more eyeballs will come and see it, and they'll also send more people to visit your profile. So that's just quick. Now, I've got something at the end which I want to tell you about that really nails LinkedIn, because for a lot of advisors, Every client you would ever want, including your ideal dream clients, are probably on LinkedIn. But most financial advisors are not using LinkedIn correctly. At the end of the day, LinkedIn is a piece of software. And like any software that you use in your business, your RAP platform, any kind of platform, your CRM system, if you've not been trained on how to use LinkedIn correctly, you will never see the real value of it. So stick around to the end. Something else, I cannot stress this one enough. Get video testimonials from happy clients. I've studied multiple financial advisor websites over the years. And I have to tell you that whilst today's websites look really good, they look really nice, they're pretty professional, they aren't much more than online brochures. They all say the same thing. I can do a little party piece at conferences where I can write the About Us page for pretty well any financial advisor in the UK, and I can do it without having met them, and they'll be really pleased with it and they'll pay me for doing it. And I can do that because they all say the same thing. Your website needs to stand out. It needs to have things that engage people. We need to get away from this cliched imagery of old folks flying kites on beaches with their grandchildren. We've got to get away from cliched images of compasses and lighthouses and really start thinking about relevant, today's person in their 70s and 80s is very, very different from someone in their 70s or 80s 20 years ago. I mentioned that used to do rock concert photography. The bands that I used to photograph in the 70s are still going today. I went to see Judas Priest a couple of months back at Wembley Stadium. Rob Halford, 79 years old. Most of our rock legends these days are in their 70s and 80s. And many older people do yoga. Older people do park run. They are vibrant and they are active. Yet, what have we got? Pictures of old people sitting on park benches or walking on beaches. We've really got to think this. Now, I know some younger advisors who might be in an employed role might not have influence over what goes on your website, but I would urge you to really ramp this up a bit. But one thing you can put on your website that is so powerful it is not true is video testimonials. People of 30 seconds to a minute of real clients sitting on their own sofa saying how when they met you it was a weight off their shoulders. It helped to reassure them about their future, and they're not going to say, since meeting Jones and Co, our net worth has doubled or our investment fund has gone up by 400. They're not going to say that. And you actually don't want them to say that. What you want them to say is how you have taken a weight off their shoulders. And that's what tends to happen when you get video testimonials with real clients. I would go so far as to say, if you do nothing else as a result of what we're doing here today, get some video testimonials. It doesn't need to be expensive. If you haven't got a budget for it, you can do it on your mobile phone. Your mobile phone is good enough quality these days. It's broadcast quality. Just make sure the audio is quite clear. Or if you have got a bit of a budget, hire a local firm to do it. It really isn't very expensive these days as well. Have relaxed images of your team. Make more of you and your backstory, saying how qualified you are and what exams you've got. Everyone's doing that. We want to hear about you. What were the brick walls that you faced in your life that you had to get over? What was your backstory? People lap this stuff up. Tell stories, put case studies, put infographics on your website as well. You could even go so far as to put a conversational AI. There are chatbots today that talk with website visitors like I'm talking to you right now. Not like the chatbots that when we want to talk to our mobile phone company, which are pretty tedious. Real conversational AIs. Another fantastic tool that you can put on your website these days is called a scorecard. A scorecard is a quiz, basically. It's an online assessment tool. We've all done them, haven't we? Could I lose £10 in the next 10 weeks? Take the quiz. Is my business ready to pitch to the dragons? Take the quiz, get your instant results. Could I run a marathon in the next 2 or 3 weeks? Take the quiz. We all love quizzes that give us information about ourselves. Now, these kind of quizzes are available for financial advisors today. You could have a quiz on your website that really engages with people. So it takes your website from being just a brochure to something that really engages. So one of the quizzes you could have is how ready for retirement are you? Take the quiz, and it asks questions about what planning they might have done already, and whether they're a saver or not. That kind of stuff. Just the sort of thing that Mick, the financial advisor in St George's Hill and Weybridge, used to do. Ask a few questions. So he used to do it on a postcard. Today, you can do exactly the same thing with a nice plug-in quiz tool. Ask the visitor to your website 20 questions. It gives them a result and it gives them some educational content at the end. They get value, you get their name, their contact details, and you can then follow up in a highly personal way as well. So, what worked back in the 70s and 80s can still work today, just with a slight digital twist to it as well. Last couple of things. Really, really important that we get this done as well. Always please measure what you're doing. Great. One of the great things about LinkedIn, it gives you all sorts of stats, which is absolutely fantastic. Really vital that you do that. Even if you are at the outset of your career, follow what the best in the world do. The top financial advisors around the world, as I said, they all do seminars. What is a seminar really? It is educating consumers. We all know the importance of client education. We all know about the advice gap. To me personally, I think the advice gap is going to be solved through educational content and educational content that people are more than willing to pay for. There are multiple websites out there where people can find courses on any topic under the sun. So, and one of them is a website called Udemy. And if you type in personal finance or financial planning, you will find dozens and dozens and dozens of courses on personal finance that are chargeable. Anything from like 20 quid to 100 quid, and yet thousands of people have purchased these courses. So that's something to be thinking about for the future. It is inevitable that the current model of how we charge for financial advice will change. It is inevitable that more and more financial advisors will step away from the regulated world and just sell personal finance education. I talk about seminars. Let me give you an example. I know a financial planner, again in the United States, and there's no reason why it can't be done in the UK, who used to put on a quarterly seminar to educate his existing clients and to attract new clients. They were very, very effective. And then he realized, I wonder what would happen if I started charging for people to come to these seminars. And he very quickly realized that just because he started charging for the seminars didn't cause any drop off in attendees. In fact, when he started charging for his seminars, he noticed that he said better attendees came along. There was a perception of greater value simply because somebody had to pay. Now, a few years on from there, he realized that he could make more money selling tickets for educational seminars about financial planning than putting on a seminar to attract new clients. And he's even taken that to the nth degree, where what he now does is a quarterly wealth symposium. That's what he calls it. Sounds a bit fancy, a wealth symposium. It is a long weekend deep dive into personal finance. Get some guest speakers in as a celebrity chef, and they do a bit of yoga, all that kind of stuff. He charges $20,000 a ticket, and he has a 6 month waiting list for this. So that's an interesting model. Seminars, webinars, they educate consumers. Articles newsletters, special reports, white papers, they all educate consumers. Podcasts, radio interviews, they all educate consumers. So the core message has got to be, how can you take the expertise that you've got? How can you take the passion that you've got and turn it into something educational? You could go to a book at the extreme end. You could do a little tips guide at the very, very simple end. Educating consumers is what it's all about. It helps you to stand out from the crowd. Also, make that content available on your website. Yes, you could even sell some of it as well. The best in the world also have massive databases. They collect email addresses. Now, if you put on seminars, let's say you put on a seminar every single week and you had 100 people turn up, there's no way that you can actually work with that many people, but you could potentially, you could put them onto an email newsletter list, and some of those people will purchase other content from you in due course, and some of them will refer you on to other people as well. So let's wrap up now. Think about my friend Mick in St. George's Hill, a one-person firm who was writing more business than just about any other financial advisor that literally I've ever come across since then. His strategy was networking, leveraging client relationships. So he attracted clients through networking. He worked with those particular clients. He then said to those particular clients, could I do a presentation to your team? So he would then do a presentation, that's public speaking. He educated the people in the room. He then collected data, but through his little postcard that people asked for, and then he sent personalized follow-ups to individual person. It worked in the mid 80s. It works today as well. It's really, really simple. So what I'm going to give you today is a copy of this video. I'm also going to give you an audio version of it as well, so you can listen on the go, in the shower, in the car, wherever you happen to go. I'm going to give you a summary, and I'm going to give you a transcript. I'm also going to give you a copy, a PDF copy of my book, Marketing and Lead Generation for Financial Advisors, and my book, Successful Seminars for Financial Advisors. There's 846 pages of content. I'm going to give you all of that for free as well. But what I'm also going to show you is I'm going to send you a link to, for the first time, I'm making available my visibility and client attraction system. It's a 6-part system for using on LinkedIn. There is a lot of content out there on the internet on how to use LinkedIn, but most of it is really a bit surface. What this does, it gives you literally a formula to follow on how to attract clients on LinkedIn. And as I said, for most of you on this call today, LinkedIn is an absolute powerhouse of opportunity. And I'll give you an example, and this is the system I use as well. On Christmas Eve last year, I posted something on LinkedIn that was aimed at financial advisors. By Boxing Day, it had 60,000 views. And hundreds of people had asked for the little accompanying resource that it put out there. Most of my posts on LinkedIn today, the minimum number of people that see it is about 3,000. It is a system you follow. Just follow the process and it can work for you. It takes away the guesswork that using LinkedIn does as well. It doesn't just attract inquiries, it attracts quality inquiries, and it helps you to stand out from the crowd. As I said, LinkedIn is a piece of software at the end of the day. Unless you've been trained on how to use it, you'll never see the real benefits of it all. So I hope you found that useful. I hope there's been something for everybody. I could talk for hours and hours and hours on different marketing activities, but I hope you found something of real value for you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you've got any questions that you actually want to ask me. That would be absolutely fantastic. More than happy to connect with you. Do look out for Life Talk on Facebook group. We'd love to have you as a member there. And as I said, if anybody wants to send me an email, philip@philipcalvert.com, I'm more than happy to send a note to you personally. So look out for the LinkedIn visibility system. That'll be coming your way shortly. And I do hope I'll meet up with you at a conference somewhere soon. So thanks a lot for your time today, people. Really enjoyed it, and take care. See you soon.